You're listening to the Passionista podcast, episode number 37. Welcome to the Passionista podcast, where we believe that passion is everything. I'm Lindsay Nadler, empowerment coach and leader of the Passionista community. Here on the podcast, you'll find inspiring stories of women who've turned their passion into a reality, as well as the best coaching tips and resources so you can do the same and walk out your calling with confidence. All right, Passionista, let's get to it. Well, hello, Passionistas. Welcome. It's going to be a really special episode today. I'm just going to bring you in on my journey. I want to tell you guys what it's like to be an entrepreneur. I want to share my story with you, my journey of this since I was a very young girl, and give you some lessons and some tips and some mindset shifts that have really helped me along the way. Now, as a business coach, this being an entrepreneur is one of my favorite things. I can't imagine working for anyone else, although to each his own. I believe not everyone is willing to do the transformation and the personal growth work that's required to be an entrepreneur, but I believe that everyone is capable of it if they are really willing to grow. And it's okay to say that, yeah, I don't want that. I'm not cut out for entrepreneurship. I'd rather be a really boss employee than be a leader helping serve someone else's vision. And that is totally fine. That's actually one of the things that I talk about in one of my little mini courses. It's called 5 Things to Consider Before You Make Your Passion Your Profession. And you can get that on lindsaynadler.com. But the reality is that you have to make a choice. Like, are you an employee or an entrepreneur? And fully own that and be cool with that, and then decide which one that you want to be. So I just wanted to bring you guys into this journey and help you understand a little bit more about who I am and where I come from. So for me, and let's just cue the go back in time, the time warp sound. Maybe my editor can throw in, Nate, like maybe you can throw in the Wayne's World, like, things they do. Anyways, if you watch Wayne's World and you're not a total weirdo, you'll get that reference. But anyways, so let's go back. All right, let me take you back to little girl Lindsay. So the reality is I was raised in an entrepreneur home. And my dad and my granddad owned a family-based business, which was real estate, rental properties, house flipping, construction. It encompassed a number of different things. And I grew up never seeing my dad like go to work for someone else, but always working and creating his own business. In my home, especially, my mom was sick a lot. And so I was with my dad a lot. I was on job sites a lot with my dad. I was in the truck a lot with my dad. And I learned a lot of things, and my grandfather as well. And they both talked about the freedom that comes with being an entrepreneur and being your own boss. Like from an early age, guys, like I knew who Robert Kiyosaki was, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like when I was 11 years old. All right. So I got a semi-education based from their perspective of entrepreneurship and the things that it takes in order to build a business and to think, more importantly, think like an entrepreneur, how to anticipate, how to have common sense, how to work with people. Now, there was a lot of examples of things that were great and a lot of examples of things that were not so great, which I'll talk about in a minute. But so I was raised in this entrepreneur home. In my home, it wasn't really about going to college and getting a steady job. And for a lot of you, that may be the home that you were raised in, and that's phenomenal. But for me, like it was drilled in my head, like most millionaires have like a C-level education. It's not about being book smart. It's about being business smart. It's about having common sense. It's about understanding how things work. And so for me, that was like what I was raised in. And so I was always a thinker, and I was trained and drilled to think how to anticipate, how to work hard, how to solve the problem. Now, a lot of these things are good, but they did come back to bite me later on. And it was this belief that you have to work so hard until exhaustion, and your life has to be full of stress in order to be an entrepreneur, own your own business. Listen to me. That is not the case. That is not true. I think there is such value in hard work, but you need to understand the difference between hard work and working hard and playing hard, and the tension between that versus being stressed out and being a workaholic and having your identity wrapped up in what you do and living from a performance-based identity, which you guys all know my story. I am on the recovery side of that. And it's just always one of those things that I always have to check in with is, am I living from a place of rest? Understanding, always telling myself, where does my identity come from? Where does my confidence come from? That's why I wrote the confidence mantra. It's why I wrote the Passion Manifesto. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, go right now, get the confidence mantra for free. I even read it, one of the podcast episodes on here out loud. It's the daily reminder that I needed in my life and my business so that I could constantly be renewing my mind and understand where my worth and where my identity truly comes from. And it's not in anything that I do or don't do. So I was raised in this entrepreneur home, but I really saw a lot of stress. I really saw a lot of conflict and strife, especially in a family-based business between my dad and my granddad. And I always kind of saw like there was like this feast or famine mode with us. And we never went without, but there was definitely this underlying stress of knowing how hard you have to work and that always being put back in our face, the work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard thing, which is great. But for me and my little kid mind, got twisted at times. And so coming from that place, even as I was a teenager, I was like giving hitting lessons. I was like learning how to work. Like I would go and mow yards at all my dad's rental properties and, thinking about ways to solve problems and make money and business ideas was a culture that I grew up in. Now, for me, I went from high school, I got a college softball scholarship, and even then I was giving hitting lessons. I was doing things on the side. When I was getting my master's degree, so I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I was getting my master's degree in criminal justice because, guys, legit, I wanted to be like a CIA agent. I wanted to be an assassin, actually. Can you imagine? So I thought I was going to go and work this super exciting government job. That was my dream, like a movie, right? It was totally not realistic to what it's really like. So I thought, criminal justice degree, let's figure out how to stop the bad guys and save the world, right? Total savior complex. But even while I was doing that, I worked 3 jobs. One was a side hustle, was giving hitting lessons. I worked at a coffee shop. I interned at the police academy and was no stranger to hard work, no stranger to entrepreneurship. And I had this background in it, and my brain, even though I didn't realize it at the time, because when you're young and you want security and you're trying to start your life, you do want that thing that is safe and secure. And because of my family life and some things that I'd gone through, I for sure wanted security because nothing ever felt secure or safe. And so I can remember realizing after about a year in law enforcement, and I loved parts of that job, guys. It's one of the reasons I am who I am today, and I learned so much. But I also realized that someone who's wired how I'm wired, who is a free thinker and is a how can we make the problem, how can we solve the problem and anticipating, isn't probably going to do well in a paramilitary civil service organization. It's just hysterical. And it's not you know what I'm saying? It's not I was getting in conflicts with people, but it's just that's not what I'm wired for. That's not what I'm gifted for. I'm meant to thrive in other environments. However, I did not have a lot of the personal growth skills or leadership skills that I have today. In fact, I was totally devoid of personal growth, a moral compass, or leadership skills. And this isn't the topic of this podcast isn't like my full testimony. So I'm not going to go there on this episode. I want to keep it to entrepreneurship. But let's just say this was Lindsay before Jesus. This was Lindsay BC before Christ. And yeah, it was hard. It was hard to be around. I was very stoic, total bitch, for lack of a better word, and really hardened in my heart, and very selfish and arrogant, and did not have the people skills, did not have the social skills, did not have the leadership and personal growth skills at all. All I knew how to do was work hard and be the best and show up and perform and try to be perfect. And so after about a year in law enforcement and meeting my husband, he was my fiance then, but my now husband of almost 11 years. So I began to like get the itch. Like, even when I was a police officer, I was running boot camps. I can remember getting off at 5 a.m. when I would work nights and immediately going to run a 5:30, 5:45, 6 a.m. boot camp. Or I was personal training clients in the gym because everybody else was just getting up and working out. And so even when I had a full-time job, I always had a side hustle, and it was primarily involving fitness because, guys, that's all that I knew. And that was what I thought I was going to do. Like, there was a time in my life, everyone, where I thought I was going to be like this fitness guru phenom. What I didn't realize is that I actually had this huge heart to empower and coach and serve women. But at the time, that manifested in fitness. If you guys know what I believe about your passion, your purpose, your calling, and your assignment, go back and listen to that episode. It's like episode number 7 or one of the very first ones on the podcast. That was just my particular assignment at the time. Being involved in fitness was an assignment that was teaching me some things about my true passion and my true calling. And so in that assignment, I thought fitness was going to be my life. Like, I had this all or nothing mentality. And as it would happen, I got invited randomly to go to this direct sales like party or mixer or thing. You know how they have these things you can come to. And I had no idea what it was. I can remember telling my husband, Rich, hey, I'm going to go to this thing. I'll be back in like an hour. I don't know what it is, but one of my friends wants me to come. Like, I just totally, it was like not a big deal. Wasn't on my radar. I was literally just going to support my friend. Well, 3 hours later, I'm signed up. I'm all into this company and I'm ready to go. And my mind was blown at this meeting because I saw this woman who had this freedom, this financial freedom, and was like doing all these things and was debt free. And I was like, oh my gosh, at the time I was engaged. I was like, yeah, I feel like I could do this and make enough to like pay for my wedding because I was going to get married in 6 months. So I invested my savings to go all in at the highest level of this direct sales company. And that was a scary investment for me because like, this is my wedding. Like I'm paying for my own wedding here. Me and my husband, Rich, like we paid for all of it. So nobody's floating my wedding. I've been on my own since I was 18. And that was just a part of my life. And so, yeah, I took my whole savings and invested it in this direct sales company. And guys, I was so naive. So please understand, like I had no baggage from other companies. I didn't even know what MLMs were. Like I had no fear. I had no like frame of reference. All I saw was someone who had results. And I thought if she can do it, surely I can do it. I had this background in fitness. These are nutritional supplements. This is perfect. And so I just did it. I just took the risk. And was I kind of freaked out? Yeah, but I did it anyway. And that's such a huge lesson for so many of you guys is like, I had no guarantee of return on investment other than I know how to work and I know that other people have done it. So why not me? I wasn't spending time in self-doubt. I wasn't spending time in fear. I knew that I had a goal, which was I need to pay for my wedding and I don't want to have to work a bunch of details because when you're a police officer, you have to sign up to work extra details. And the ones that I always had to work were like dying of cigarette smoke at the bingo hall. And I don't want to do that. That's stupid. That would also get in the way of my other side hustle, which was boot camps and personal training. And so I was like, this is a natural fit. And for some of you, you just need to begin to risk. You beginning to look at like there are no guarantees in life. There are no guarantees in business. That's one of the biggest questions I get from students or people that are interested in signing up for coaching or a course. Like, well, how will I know that I'll get my money back? I'm like, you don't know. What are you talking about? Like, you don't know. Like, who knows if you will? But would it be worth it to see? Are you willing to spend the money to risk? It's like, are you going to do the work is really the question. It's like there's no magic course or magic secret or magic thing. It's like, are you willing to learn and transform and grow? And are you willing to invest at a high level in order to do that? So that was my first exposure to risking big. I spent every single bit of my savings to go into the highest level of this company. And in the first year, I was able to earn enough to pay for the last chunk of my wedding. And so not only did I pay that investment back, I earned enough to pay the investment back and pay for the last chunk of my wedding and our honeymoon to Lake Tahoe. And listen to me, guys. That investment was one of the best investments that I ever made because it still pays me to this day. It was my first exposure to passive income. Now, I understood what passive income was because I can remember being a kid and always hearing things like, make your money work for you. You want things that pay you every day while you're doing nothing, or it's passive, it's residual. And, as a 20-something-year-old to make that type of investment, even though it was so scary, most 20-year-olds are just trying to figure out how they're going to pay their light bill, which was certainly mine. I lived paycheck to paycheck. In fact, there was certainly months where that last week of the month, I'm living on peanut butter and jelly and a can of Folgers coffee and the free Chick-fil-A that I got at being a police officer. That was the reality of my life. I didn't have cable. It was bare bones at my little rent house that I lived in, but it was such a beautiful time. And I look back and I'm like, I love that little rent house that I lived in. Didn't have anything. All of my furniture was like hand-me-down furniture and none of it matched. And I can remember going and buying like a can of paint and like fixing that place up, but it was mine and I earned it and I loved it. And there were so many good things that I think about when I look back on those days. Things were so much more simple. It's so funny. But I wouldn't trade what I have today for anything. So that was my first exposure to investing. Now, as the journey continues, the next 2 or 3 years were spent working a full-time job as a police officer on 12-hour shifts. If you guys understand shift work, this is no joke, okay? You need to take a minute right now and thank God for all of the first responders in your life. Anyone you know that is working shift, it can be very soul-crushing just because it's physically exhausting. Okay. Not to mention emotionally and mentally hard. Okay. So I was working this full-time job and I had this direct sales side hustle and I'm still personal training clients and running boot camps. So there's also that piece of my journey where I understand fully the side hustle life. I understand fully what it was like to get off of work and kind of change clothes real quick, put on some makeup and go do a meeting with someone and get home and have about an hour with my people before I passed out and then got up and did it all over again. Lunch breaks, I'm doing calls, any type of breaks, I'm squeezing in my side hustle. And I was always learning. And even like when I'm driving down the road, I'm listening to training. Like there's always, always, always learning. And if you're in that place right now where you have a full-time gig and you also have this side hustle that you want to one day be your full-time deal, you've got to start looking for things called fringe hours. And you got to get really diligent and disciplined with your time and be willing to say no to everything else for a season so that you can say yes to everything later. And for me, that's what it was like. It was like I put my head down and I went to work and I realized really, really quick, especially being in direct sales, that I had so much personal growth to do, so much leadership to do. Like I was clueless. I had no people skills. I had no leadership skills. I was used to telling people what to do, but not like leading and loving and being a servant leader. And I had a strong growth curve because I can remember getting to this point where, like, honestly, I was being a brat, just throwing a fit, like we all do, where it's like, why isn't this working? And this should be happening faster. And I'm so much better than this person. And look at them. They just like have all this success. And like you just throw your little fits. And I was in one of those places and I had to take a real hard personal inventory and say, Lindsay, you are not where you need to be. And if you had what you want, it would not be sustainable. It would come crashing all around you. You've got to up level, girl. Like, and it was through going to live events that I was so aware of this. Like, you guys understand, like, this was my first exposure to personal growth events, to self-help, to anybody that was really talking about servant leadership instead of like commando type of like real macho wacho leadership that I'd been exposed to. And I can remember going to this women's event and being blown away and being like, oh my gosh, like these are women I want to be like. Like, look at this. Look at this confidence. Look at this strength. Look at this kindness. Look at this just amazing. Like, I was nowhere near like the women in the room. And I'm not saying that like I was comparing and competing. It was just like, whoa, like you have so much growth. Like, stop with the arrogance. Like, come on, get humble, get teachable, because I wasn't teachable at all. I thought I knew best. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do it my way. And it didn't work. And I had to get teachable. I had to get educated. So that put me on a journey of massive leadership growth. And I'm so thankful for that company, because if it would not have been for my exposure to that company, I would not be where I am today, because it was my first exposure to leadership. Reading leadership books, listening to CDs. That's back when CDs were still a thing. Like listening to positive life-filled stuff instead of like just going home and vegging out on whatever TV or listening to whatever. I learned to get really focused and intentional with my time and like getting those fringe hours in place. And for many of you, that's the thing. It's like you've got to look at what is the time you have to devote to your business. And this is one thing that I learned. It's like when I'm at my full-time job, that's what I'm committed to. So it's like I'm taking the side hustle off the table, except when I'm on break or like when there's a time for passive learning. Okay. So I don't know what your job description is like, if you're allowed to like listen to things while you work, but if there's an opportunity for that, do it. Like on your lunch break, on your way to work, on your way home from work, where are those little pockets of time that you might be spending zoning out that you can get some good leads or work done there? So that's where I learned all of that. I learned how to hustle. I learned how to get diligent and intentional with my time, how to make my time work for me instead of saying I don't have enough time. I learned how to be flexible. I learned how to pivot. And I also learned how to increase my capacity to get things done. And so like that meant like on the weekends, on a day, like I had to be very intentional, and everybody in my family like had to know like this is what I'm doing so that I can replace my full-time income. And it was a commitment. Like, thank God for my husband. He was so supportive. Like I can just remember coming home, like he's handling dinner, he's handling kids, because as soon as I come home, I had calls lined up. Like I was making sure that I had work there for me. And I really think that this is where I learned a huge principle that a lot of you need to understand. And it's the law of momentum. I'm pretty sure John Maxwell talks about this in one of his books. I'm not sure if he's the exact one that like came up with this, but it's just like a law of the universe, kind of law of business, is understanding momentum and building momentum and keeping momentum in your business or in your life, whatever it is, the thing that you're the goal that you're going after. There's little baby steps along the way that you take, and you get quick wins, you get quick wins, you get quick wins, and it's momentum. And you're building momentum and you're building momentum and you're stuffing your pipe, you're stuffing your funnel with leads and people and things that you're meeting, and oh, that's working, or oh, you did this, and oh, you accomplished that. You're building momentum. And for a lot of you, you build momentum and then you stop because you're inconsistent. And then you have to start the whole process over again. And if you can build momentum up to a certain point, it's just like riding a bike. Like if you're going up the hill, like you're pedaling, you're pedaling, you're pedaling. And then when you go down the hill, like you're doing nothing because the momentum that you've built up is what's propelling you. And that's the same in business. You have to understand that is it's one step after the other, create momentum. What can you do to create momentum right now with what you've got and keep it going and let the one thing that's in front of you lead to the next thing. So I hope that that makes sense. So that's where I learned it. Okay. And 3 years of hustle, of digging deep, hard learning curve with leadership, team development, doing what I needed to do, following the training and systems that were in place throughout the company. No excuses, going after my vision, keeping it in front of me, getting my why so crystal clear that it would make me cry. It's cliche. A lot of people say this, but it's the truth. You need to ask yourself why till you cry. What's your purpose that gets you so on fire, your passion that's fueling you, that you are so emotional when you think about it? If you don't have that, you will really struggle with motivation, consistency, and creating momentum in your business. So for me, I came to a turning point where I was about to have to go back to night shift work. So at the agency that I was at, you worked a couple of months day shift and a couple of months night shift. Well, I had really developed a ton of momentum and reached some leadership milestones where I was like, come to this decision where, okay, you're about to have to go work nights again. And that is going to really affect your business. Because if you guys are familiar, like with direct sales, a lot of things happen in the evening, events, hotel meetings, calls. So that was like, and I would be sleeping during the day, or I'd have to get up like 4 hours earlier, which I'd had to do at sometimes in order to do calls. And it's just like, it was like almost impossible. And so had to make a really tough decision. Again, this is the lesson, risk. Where I was at in my business was a touch premature in order for me to quit my full-time job. I had replaced my full-time income, but it hadn't yet proven to be consistent in the amount of time that I wanted it to be to make me feel good. But I knew that if I didn't take the leap and just do it, then I had the possibility to really tank. And so there's something about that big risk, the burning the ship behind you, burning the bridges, so to speak, that really propels you forward. And so I did it. I quit or retired early. And that took me to the next level in my business because I had burned the bridges. I had burned the ships behind me. Like, I'm like, hey, there's no going back. I've got to go forward. And the reality is I probably could have gotten another, like if it didn't have worked out, and that's the other thing you got to understand. Like, what's the worst case scenario? Like some of you guys are so afraid to risk. You're so afraid to go for it. Like, what's the worst case scenario? Can you live with that? Like, you can always go get a job somewhere. Like, come on, guys, this is America. Like, you can do it. Like, you can go get a job somewhere if you need to make ends meet, if it's not going to work, or like you can pick something else up. So I knew that I had this direct sales business, but I also still had my personal training business and my boot camp business, which I really loved as well. And so that's the transition that I made full time. And I doubled and then tripled my income and got it to a point where it was paying me passively. And then that allowed me to do so many other things in my life. And I actually spent some time in the online fitness space. This was my first exposure to online marketing, is where I actually learned a ton. I had this like fitness recipe blog and I actually sold weightlifting belts for a hot minute. Yes, weightlifting belts, hot pink and gold and all these different color weightlifting belts. And I got CrossFit certified and was just in personal training, fitness, CrossFit, boot camp, online fitness world. Okay. Nutrition supplements, like this direct sales thing, like that was it. And that's what I thought I was going to do forever. And I was going to go to the top of the top and be this fitness guru. And I was doing it and I was in it. And that's what I thought my life was going to be. But it's interesting when you make the plans for your life without checking in with God's plans. And I had done it again without even realizing it. And my identity and who I thought I was and where I thought I was going was completely wrapped up in how well I was doing in my business and how well I was doing compared to other people. And oh my gosh, it's so interesting that when you begin to make an idol out of things in your life, and an idol is just anything that's taking the place of God as your source of fulfillment. And we do it all the time, guys, without even realizing it. But this particular thing had become a major idol in my life. And what we idolize, hear me on this, what we idolize, we demonize. And that's what I began to do. I began to resent certain things, resent certain people, began to get really bitter. And it was because like I was holding people to a standard that only God can be at. God is the only perfect person on the planet. And so what happens a lot of times, my friends, here's a warning that I want you to understand, is that when you idolize something, God will begin to prune you of that. He says real clear, I'm not going to have any other idols before me. He's a jealous God. And he does it because he loves you so much. He loves us so much. And he knows what's best for you, and he knows what you need, and he knows that there are certain things that if he gave them to you would destroy you and kill you. And it takes discernment to understand that. It takes discernment to know that. But man, that season taught me so much about so many things. And I used everything that I learned for business and the freedom that I had and the wealth that I had created. And it was all for a reason. It was all God ordained. God began to call me. And I was very reluctant because remember, guys, my business, my life, like as in the fitness space and entrepreneur world, was my idol. Like that was my thing. That was my jam. And God asked me to give it up. And he asked me to start co-found a nonprofit that helped victims of sex trafficking in our area where I live. And I knew the reality from my law enforcement work. I did not want to do it. I went kicking and screaming, but it would not leave me alone, and God wouldn't leave me alone. And I had a choice to make, and it was either follow the call of God on my life or not. And I didn't want to live with not following that call. And what happened next was like one of the hardest things that I'd ever gone through. It was a total identity shift. It was a total, like, in a new place, in a new sphere, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. I had no idea what I was walking into. I thought I did. I knew it was going to be really tough, and that's why I wanted no part of it. But I thought, all right, I've got some skills, and I did, like, totally did. But I'm talking emotionally and mentally. There were a lot of things that I was not prepared for. No, you can't be. And here's the lesson. You don't know what you don't know. So you need to stop beating yourself up. You need to stop living in the past. You need to stop condemning and judging yourself because you feel like somehow you should have known better, you should have done better. You only know what you know. And most of us are just doing the best with what we have. We're doing the best with what we can. And that was my story. And so I co-founded and was the executive director of a nonprofit that helped victims of sex trafficking. And within the first year, we're completely donation funded, was paying for employees a house, which is like pretty unheard of in the nonprofit space if you don't know anything about it. And just so you know, being an executive director means you're in charge of accruing the finances. So I had to go out and get these donations. I had to have big events. I had to inspire vision, ask people to follow me. It was like huge. You form a board, you get the community behind your vision. And not only that, was doing all of the work, was doing all of the things, right? And it was a really tough time because of just the nature of the work that we're doing, but also a really beautiful time. And that ministry has gone on to thrive. And we actually merged with another local ministry who was doing the same thing, and it was the best for everyone, and now is doing even better than when I was there. That I just want you to understand that taking what I learned as an entrepreneur into the nonprofit faith space, which is historically known for not being that great at entrepreneurship, for not being that great at systems, for not being that great at marketing and media. There's a poverty mentality that's associated with a lot of nonprofits and a lot of just money blocks that are ridiculous. But I was able to take what I learned and move into that space. But here's what I learned in that space. And it wasn't so much about workaholism as what, or identity, or getting my identity from it. It was really about boundaries and burnout. And this is important for you guys to understand, is that you cannot be everything to everyone. You cannot do it all. And you are not supposed to do it all. God is not calling you to be a martyr. God is not calling you to, what's the word? Berate yourself or like work yourself into the ground for the call. And for me, learning how to manage stress, learning how to get good boundaries around my stress and with people, just due to the delicate nature of what we're doing, was the biggest lesson that I learned. And it's like just nuts, because I had never, ever studied boundaries and personal growth and development like I did when I was involved with this nonprofit. And in fact, this is also where I learned how to create courses and how to lead like Bible studies and lead educational programs. And like I was empowering women. You guys understand, you see the pattern here. So that was my assignment, but it was always about empowering women, which was my passion and my call in my life. And so, that's where I learned how to do a lot of the things that I do today. It's like, if you can help someone with extreme emotional trauma who has been a trafficking victim for her whole life, I'm pretty sure I can help Joe Blow on the street or Sally, sitting at home. So like, that's where I learned so much about personal growth and development and continuing to invest in myself at a high level. But the biggest lesson that I learned there was boundaries, and that we cannot ever sacrifice our health for the sake of any call, ministry, business, whatever. So I found myself in that situation, which it really wasn't about the nonprofit. It was really about my whole life, not understanding how to manage stress and not being in touch with my body, and not just the go, go, go and do. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. So intensity is my jam. And what I've learned now is how to fuel that intensity in a way that serves me instead of a way that harms me without me realizing it. And so like my body literally said no more. I had extreme adrenal fatigue. My hormones went berserk. This is gross, but just go with it. I had like extreme diarrhea for like 6 months straight. Like my gut biome was like, I was a hot mess. Like guys, like it almost killed me. Okay. And that was about 4 years ago. And this whole time I'm like coaching women. I had like given up my fitness business, my online deal, and I'm learning how to coach women. But it's funny because even back in my fitness days, that's what I did. I coached women. We did emotional, mental, and physical coaching. It was all a part of the thing. And so like, I'm still coaching. Like I've still got this side hustle. I've still got this thing where I'm going and speaking, and I'm helping people do their stuff. Like when you're a coach, you can't help but coach. It's just like what happens. And so my health had taken like a crazy turn. I'd always been like this super athlete, had always been, just like on it, and I could barely function. I could barely get through the day. And I finally went to a functional pharmacist, and she basically was like, Lindsay, you're a mess. You have got to take a major break. You've got to take a sabbatical, and you've got to get your body together. And it's just amazing how God works, because around that time, the opportunity for merging happened, and it was the best decision for everyone. And then I went on this journey of holistic self-discovery and learned how to live from a place of rest, and started doing yoga and started seeing a functional medicine doctor, getting my hormones in line, and really just resting. Learning how to be an entrepreneur and live from rest is one of the biggest tips that I can give you today. And what that means for me is learning how to flow and always coming back to that my confidence comes from who God says I am. And He is fueling me and He's giving me what I need, and everything else I can just release. If you listen to the episode with Jenny Donnelly, she talks about an acronym for rest. And she says it means to release every single thing. And to be still and know in scripture actually means to let go, to surrender. And that's what one of the biggest things that you can learn being an entrepreneur is surrender the outcome. Let go of the how. Let go of the, I've got to have this thing has to work or I'll die. Like, God's got you. God's going to direct your path. God is lining everything up, and He will take away and move what doesn't need to be in your life because He loves you. So coming out of that time was about 2 years of rest and massive growth, massive leadership again, massive investment in coaching, in learning, in transforming. And then the Passionista community was birthed. This was a baby, so to speak, that I'd been nurturing and being prepared for my whole life. And had always, man, I can just remember thinking about it, dreaming about it, even like way back before we started the nonprofit, and always wanting to do it. But the season, right? And everything lined up. And I felt like I was finally in a place where I had learned and gone through and overcome and persevered to where I was ready to bring this thing forth. And man, here comes the learning process and learning growth again. And so it has been an incredible. Now, I started this in 2017, late 2017. I launched my first course in January of 2018, and it has been such a beautiful, wild ride. And I'm still learning. I've learned so much along the way. And one of the biggest tips I can give you here is that we never stop growing, and the power of investing in yourself is paramount. Listen to me, my friends. It's so funny when people haggle me over a $47 or $19 course. I have invested a Ivy League, probably more than that, education in myself, in courses, in coaching, in technology, in learning, because I understand that my mind and what I'm learning is my best investment. And that if I won't invest in myself, then the people that I'm serving won't either. And I know that the call in my life is big, and I'm willing to continue to invest and to steward that call. So that has been the cliff notes. I know this was a little bit of a longer episode, but that's been a insight into my entrepreneur journey and all of the things that I've learned along, not all of the things, but some of the highlights of what I've learned along the way and am still learning. And I will probably do an episode coming up on what I've learned from building an online business, my lessons learned from that. So, okay, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this. Remember, you're a Passionista now. So go leave a review, take a screenshot, share it with a friend. And I would love to put a name with a face over on Instagram. So come see me, and I will talk to you next time. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And because I am so grateful, I want to give you something for free. Head over to lindsaynadler.com where you can download my completely free confidence affirmation and mantra that you can use every single day to instantly boost your confidence and renew your mind. And if you are loving all of the free content you're getting here on the podcast, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and share this episode with a friend, because empowered women empower women. I would love to connect with you on social media. You can find me at Lindsay Nadler on every social media platform. Until next time, I'll talk with you soon.